Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the quiet street of Elmwood Drive. A chill lingered in the air, a remnant of the night before. All the sounds of chirping birds seemed to mask an undercurrent of tension that gripped the small town. Nestled among quaint houses, painted in muted pastels, the home of Lisa Matthews stood out, not for its appearance, but for the brand of sorrow that had recently marked it. Lisa, a 28-year-old elementary school teacher, was known for her infectious laughter and the kindness she extended to children and neighbors alike. She was the embodiment of love and her community, a thorough support system, woven tightly with friendships and familial bonds. On this particular day, however, her laughter would be silenced, giving way to whispers of confusion and fear that rippled through Elmwood like an ominous storm cloud. It would take mere hours for the news of her vanishing to bleed into the quiet corners of the neighborhood. She hadn't arrived at school that morning, and when her absence went unreported for too long, the alarm bells began to ring. Her young students, innocently unaware of the darkness lurking just outside their classroom walls, would soon be left with empty desks and unanswered questions. As dusk approached, the local police arrived at Lisa's home. With sullen expressions, they knocked on the door, an act that would spark a relentless investigation into her disappearance, igniting a search for clues that would reveal fragile truths buried within a community pretending to be untouched by violence. Little did they know, they were about to uncover the fragile threads connecting love, betrayal, and ultimately, loss. The victim. Lisa Matthews wasn't just a name in a missing person report. She was a testament to compassion wrapped in youthful exuberance. Growing up in Elmwood, she blossomed into a beacon of hope for many. Her childhood memories were woven into the fabric of the town. The buzzing laughter at the ice cream parlor, the summers spent running through golden fields, and the cozy gatherings that spilled over in her parents' backyard. Those who knew her couldn't help but smile when they recalled her perseverance and fierce dedication to shaping young minds at Elmwood Elementary. As a teacher, Lisa was the kind of educator who saw potential in every child. Her classroom was a refuge where creativity knew no bounds. She organized art exhibits featuring her students' work, turning ordinary school events into whimsical celebrations of talent. Parents revered her, often stopping to share stories of how she'd inspired their children to find joy in learning. It was this dedication that made her disappearance even more unsettling. On the surface, Lisa seemed to live a charmed life. Yet like so many, she had her shadows. Friends noted a shift in her demeanor over the past few months. She had become more reserved, her laughter tinged with an unfamiliar strain. She occasionally brushed off questions regarding her personal life, citing the demands of teaching as her sole focus. Those close to her hinted at a recent breakup that had left scars, but Lisa wore a mask of resilience, shielding her vulnerabilities from even her closest companion. As the investigation unfolded, the more profound truth began to emerge. Lisa was not just a victim of her circumstances, but of the very ties that had once anchored her. Those who cared for her would soon wrestle with the bittersweet memories of the girl who filled their lives with brightness, now overshadowed by a growing mystery. What had happened to the girl loved by so many, and what secrets lay buried beneath her radiant smile? The crime scene, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie twilight across Elmwood Drive. The police scoured Lisa Matthews' home. The front door, slightly ajar, revealed a world frozen in time. Officers stepped inside, careful not to disturb the sanctity of the crime scene. The living room was dimly lit, the soft glow of an ornate lamp illuminating the cozy space. Photos lined the wall, snapshots filled with joy, laughter, and friendship. Now testaments to a life inexplicably uprooted. The air hung thick with tension as the lead investigator, Detective Sarah Mitchell, scanned the room. A comfy couch stained with a forgotten cup of coffee beckoned her attention, and she could sense that the familiar comfort of this home had transformed into a site of pain. Lisa's purse lay discarded by the front door, the mix of textbooks and personal items spilling onto the polished hardwood floor. Each object told a story, yet they only deepened the sense of confusion. Her cell phone was missing, which was unusual for a woman who constantly communicated with family and friends. The investigators noted the disarray, a scattering of papers, a few plant pots toppled over, and an uncharacteristic disorder that felt so foreign in Lisa's organized life. Upstairs, her bedroom appeared untouched, the bed neatly made, an unsettling contrast to the chaos below. A quick search revealed a journal tucked beneath the bed, its pages filled with Lisa's thoughts, hopes, and dreams. A brighter dialogue between her heart and mind. As Detective Mitchell turned the pages, the subtle elegance of Lisa's handwriting juxtaposed sharply against the urgent reality of her disappearance. Hours passed, and the forensic team combed through every detail, searching for anything that could lead them to the truth. Outside, a crowd had gathered. A mix of friends and curious neighbors that arched concerned brows and whispered, hushed conversations. Behind the facade of small-town charm lay a deepening anxiety, one that sensed this crime would shake Elmwood to its core. In that moment, it became evident. There was a monster lurking in the shadows, threatening to unravel the very fabric of the lives it had once sheltered. The early investigation. In the days following Lisa Matthews' disappearance, Detective Sarah Mitchell and her team worked tirelessly to gather leads. The scent of fresh coffee wafted through the precinct as officers pored over stacks of paper, documenting every tip and establishing timelines. Community flyers adorned bulletin boards, emblazoned with Lisa's radiant smile, each one a silent appeal for help from anyone who might know her whereabouts. Her friends were called in for questioning, their minds a tumultuous mix of worry and disbelief. They recounted their last conversations with Lisa, the distress in her voice, apparent even through her attempts at normalcy. Conversations emerged of the recent breakup that had weighed heavily on her spirit, a fact that left loose threads hanging dangerously between heartbreak and desperation. Detective Mitchell was particularly struck by a mention of a man named Jake, Lisa's ex-boyfriend. Though their relationship had ended amicably, there were whispers of jealousy, of lingering attachments that had muddied the water. Officers tracked down Jake as a critical lead, his reluctance to speak about their relationship doing little to allay suspicions. His alibi seemed solid, yet something in his demeanor raised red flags. Meanwhile, the investigators scoured Lisa's social media, piecing together her digital footprint. Old posts revealed friendships that weren't as straightforward as they appeared, even hinting at tension with certain acquaintances. The layers of Lisa's life unfolded, each revealing intricate connections and hidden disputes. A local teenager, aware of the escalating concern, stepped forward with details surrounding the night before Lisa vanished. He had seen her arguing with a dark-haired man near the park, just blocks from her home. The details were scant but vivid enough to ignite a flicker of hope within the investigation of potential sighting. that could lead to ants. The sun sank low, casting an orange hue against the dim walls of the precinct. And Detective Mitchell stood in the center of the chaos, a web of uncertainty swirling around her. As each piece of the puzzle began to fit together, it became chillingly clear. Clock was ticking, and they had to act quickly to uncover the truth before another day passed, and another chance to bring Lisa home slipped away. The dead ends as the days turned into weeks. The initial fervor of the investigation began to dim, replaced by a suffocating blanket of despair. Detective Sarah Mitchell stood in a cluttered conference room, staring at a whiteboard covered in names, timelines, and highlighted connections. Each lead that flickered with promise quickly proved fruitless, leaving a haunting echo of false hope in their wake. Jake, Lisa's ex-boyfriend, had been cooperative, but his outward sadness appeared in stark contrast to the suspicions clinging to it. After an extensive search of his car and home, evidence turned up scant, his alibi consistent with documented proof. As much as she wanted to pinpoint her hunch, Mitchell knew they needed more than mere instincts. They required concrete evidence. The local teenager's sighting of Lisa arguing with a man in the park imploded into a tangle of confusion. Inquiries identified multiple dark-haired men in the area that night, adding to the labyrinth of uncertainty. Each individual interviewed waved off any connection, almost dismissively, as if Lisa was simply another name lost in a distant memory. Community efforts hinged on both hope and grief. Search parties scoured wooded areas, volunteers adorned with neon vests scuttling through the underbrush, calling out for any sign of Lisa. But with each day of fruitless searching, faces grew worn with worry, and fatigue settled heavily in the air. Families who once rallied around each other in support were now grappling with their fears, caught between the need for answers and an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. As autumn settled in, the leaves transformed from vibrant greens into dull browns, symbolizing a decay that matched the investigation. Missed birthday milestones weighed heavily on the community. Lisa's 30th was approaching, a stark reminder of the time lost. Detective Mitchell pored over Lisa's diary once more, searching for overlooked clues amongst its intimate words and fervent aspiration. But her connection to the victim was gradually engulfed by the imposing reality of the Cassia case that seemed bound to stagnation. Frustration built like a thunderstorm, and with it came the realization that they were running out of time. The goal was to bring Lisa back, but as the investigation unraveled, it felt more and more as if they were chasing echoes in the dark. A break in the case. Just as the autumn winds began to howl, swirling leaves across the streets of Elmwood, a glimmer of hope pierced the stifling gray atmosphere. It came unexpectedly, unbidden, when a local woman, Mary Jacobs, decided it was time to step forward. She had hesitated for weeks, the sense of obligation clashing with the weight of her hesitation. But the haunting images of Lisa's face clung to her thoughts. Mary had been jogging in the nearby wooded area during the early morning hours of Lisa's disappearance when she'd seen something. At first, the memory had seemed too vague, too imperfect to share. But as her nightmares festered, the urgency grew. It wasn't until she met a friend who encouraged her to speak up that she made the call to the police department. Detective Mitchell listened intently as Mary recounted the chilling sight she'd witnessed. A woman she believed was Lisa being escorted by a tall, stocky man with gray hair. She remembered noting the warmth of the autumn sun warming her face, contrasting sharply with the sense of dread she felt when she saw the pair near an old logging road, a place where few chose to venture alone. Mary noted a distinct tattoo on the man's forearm, a swirl of ink that seemed oddly familiar. The details weren't perfect, but the detective's heart raced. Each second resonated with the potential but also a fragile hope fraught with fear. Mitchell quickly connected the dots, poring over local police records and reaching out to investigate tattoo parlors in a bid to narrow down the suspect. Time ticked on as she and her team worked with urgency, piecing together surveillance footage from nearby stores that captured the man's likeness. Finally, a name floated to the surface. Tony Niles, a figure with a troubled past filled with substance abuse and charges of minor violence. Within days, they had secured a warrant for his arrest. The team made their way to the address listed for Tony, a dilapidated apartment complex at the edge of town. As they approached the door, the quietude of the morning shattered with the sudden surge of adrenaline. There was a feeling in the air, a charged spirit that vibrated with the promise of resolution. As Detective Mitchell knocked, her heart pounded in her chest, the tension palpable. This could be the moment they had been waiting for. With each heartbeat, they balanced on the precipice of breaking ground in a case that had left scars across their community. Would this lead bring Lisa hope, or would it plunge them deeper into darkness, revealing truths they weren't yet prepared to face? The suspect, the gritty apartment building, stood in stark contrast to the quaint houses that punctuated Elmwood Drive. Broken stairs creaked underfoot as Detective Sarah Mitchell and her team ascended toward Tony Niles' unit. The air was thick with tension, a blend of fear and determination fueling their every step. There was no turning back now. They were on the cusp of confronting the specter of Lisa Matthews' fate. Detective Mitchell knocked firmly, her heart racing in sync with the echoing thud against the door. Moments passed, thick with suspense, before faint footsteps shuffled inside. When the door finally creaked open, Tony Niles peered out, his disheveled appearance and vacant stare amplifying the sense of foreboding. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes, and the disarray of his clothing spoke of a life in tattershus demeanor, both nonchalant and charged with unpredictable energy. Detective Mitchell, Elmwood PD, we'd like to ask you a few questions, she announced, careful to assess his reactions. Tony's brow furrowed, a flicker of recognition sparking in his gaze. "What I do?" His voice dripped with defiance, yet he stepped aside, allowing the detectives to enter. The apartment was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of stale cigarettes and unwashed clothes. It felt eerily claustrophobic, as if the walls were closing in, amplifying the tension of the situation. As they filed in, Mitchell scrutinized the sparsely furnished space for crude-sold newspapers strewn across a table, a flickering television displaying static, but no signs that confirmed their apprehension. The small details, the scattered trash, the remnants of half-finished meals whispered stories of neglect. Still, she focused on Tony, urging him to cooperate as she initiated the questioning. "Where were you on the night Lisa Matthews disappeared?" she inquired, her tone measured and calm. Tony's response was defensive, reminiscent of someone who had rehearsed an excuse 1,000 times. He blamed temporary work in the city, but when pressed for details, his story disintegrated like smoke. Detective Mitchell recognized the effort. His clenched fists and quivering voice betrayed his attempt to maintain cool indifference. With precise questioning, the team began to unravel his threads of deception. He slipped, revealing knowledge about Lisa that shouldn't have been possible for someone claiming not to know her. Tension crackled in the air. If Tony had been involved, he was slipping, and Mitchell could feel. Each question drew them closer to a precipice, either a confession or a dangerous game of cat and mouse. The moment bore a gravity that weighed heavily, knowing that one small misstep could unravel the entire investigation. As the interrogation continued, an indictment hung between fenth half-truths, intertwining with dark implications, tightening the noose around the possibility of his portrayal as either a scared bystander or an active participant. The prospect grew increasingly unsettling. The truth was lurking just beneath, and it was time to bring it to light. The trial. The courtroom was a sea of faces, each one reflecting a tapestry of emotions ranging from skepticism to sorrow. Family members of Lisa Matthews clutched each other's hands, their grip tight with a blend of anxiety and resolve. The bright lights overhead illuminated the somber setting, where whispers filled the air, punctuated only by the sound of shuffling papers and muffled exchanges between attorneys. Tony Niles sat at the defendant's table, a far cry from the defiance he displayed during the interrogation months ago. Now, he appeared smaller, almost fragile, beneath the weight of the allegations that bore down upon him. The charges: kidnapping, assault, and the possible murder of Lisa Matthews. Each day of the trial added layers of heartache to an already shattered narrative, thrusting her loved ones into a reality they had dreaded. Detective Sarah Mitchell, having led the investigation from the outset, took the stand, her demeanor composed yet earnest. She recounted the evidence Mary Jacobs citing, the forensic details linking Tony to Lisa's last known whereabouts, and the haunting testimony of those who had come forward. Each detail painted a portrait of an accused who had evaded the truth for far too long. The prosecution hammered at the heart of the case: Tony's tumultuous history, his sporadic episodes of violence, and the mounting evidence of his obsession with Lisa. A revelation that sent ripples of unease through the court. As Detective Mitchell detailed the investigation's dark twists, the audience remained captive, their breath held tight as they absorbed the chilling truths. On the sidelines sat Lisa's family, their expressions a blend of anguish and determination. Her mother's eyes brimmed with unshed tears, the anguish of a parent who had lost a child yet remained rooted in the fight for justice. Each testimony afforded them a thread of hope that perhaps, someday, they would find closure. As the defense attorney presented Tony's side, they painted a picture laden with excuses and narratives centered on misinterpretation and circumstantial evidence. Tony, they claimed, was merely in the wrong place at the wrong time. He painted himself as a scapegoat, someone unable to help himself from the grasp of events spiraling out of control. Yet the prosecution's case built steadily like a storm, elusive and gathering momentum, until it culminated in a suffocating weight that demanded acknowledgement. The final witness to take the stand was a forensic analyst, detailing the DNA evidence linking Tony's hair to a strand found at the scene. It was a knife twisted into the heart of the defense, shattering the illusion of innocence and fortifying the belief the truth lay just within reach. As the trial wound down, the jury exited the courtroom to deliberate a verdict. Time seemed to stretch painfully as the atmosphere thickened with uncertainty. Seconds turned into minutes, and still, the hallways felt charged with an expectation that hung like a palpable force. Finally, the door creaked open, and the jurors filed in. The foreperson's voice rang out steady and clear. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." The words echoed through the courtroom, sparking gasps and tears of relief, intermingled with haunting sorrow. Justice had found a foothold, if only momentarily. In that moment, amid the tumult of emotions, the future felt tangled, both an end and a beginning, as the community processed the shadows cast by Lisa's act. Yet perhaps for her family, it was the first step toward healing. A ritualistic acknowledgement that they could finally begin to seek peace in the fragments left behind. The aftermath. The gavel sound reverberated like a distant thunderclap, sealing Tony Niles' fate and sending shockwaves through the community of Elmwood. In the weeks that followed the trial, the wounds left by Lisa Matthews' disappearance and the subsequent revelations began to intertwine with the fabric of everyday life, forever altering the rhythm of the town. For Lisa's family, the verdict brought a bittersweet closure, yet grief lingered like a vine enwrapped tightly around their hearts. The echoes of laughter once shared with their beloved daughter seemed ghosts in yet another vacant space, a reminder of the empty chair at family gatherings. As autumn descended into winter, the season of gratitude arrived, thickened with sorrow. Thanksgiving brought an empty plate to the Tablia symbol of absence that transformed the holiday into a festivity shadowed by loss. Detective Sarah Mitchell found herself drawn to the community as well, grappling with the haunting images of the investigation. Once her days had been filled with the urgency of discovering truth, now they felt burdened by the reality of an unresolved case, one that had captured the town's soul. This would not simply be another closed file. It became a story etched into the hearts of those who lived there. Support groups formed, bolstered by the trauma they had experienced together. They gathered to discuss the fragile resilience stitched together amid their turmoil. They spoke of Lisa, her laughter, her passion for teaching, and her generous spirit, clinging to these memories as beacons of hope. The need to honor her life became paramount, as did the desire to ensure that no one else would face a similar fate. In shared grief, the town discovered a new narrativon, not defined solely by loss, but by an unwavering commitment to one another. Fundraising events were organized for local youth programs, dedicated to nurturing the potential that Lisa had so fervently believed in. The community sought to channel their pain into purpose, ensuring her legacy lived on in classrooms, art projects, and scholarship initiatives named in her honor. Detective Mitchell remained vigilant, often returning to the sites where they had searched for Lisa, reflecting on the fragility of life and the darkness that sometimes curled into the corners of even the most unsuspecting homes. She understood that the investigation had not simply been a professional pursuit. It had become personal. Each life touched by the aftermath was a reminder that the fragility of human connection demanded vigilance, empathy, and unwavering resolve. As winter settled, the starkness of the season mirrored the emotional challenge of healing. Floating snowflakes danced lazily down, blanketing the town in white, a fragile beauty concealing the scars beneath. In this healing is where the community found strength, an unbreakable resolve to carry forward the memory of Lisa Matthews against the backdrop of life's complexities. In the flickering warmth of a small candlelit vigil held on the anniversary of her disappearance, they gathered as one. Together they lit candles, each flame a testament to hope, resilience, and love that could never truly extinguish. And though the journey ahead remained fraught with lingering questions and healing pains, Elmwood would ensure that Lisa's light would guide them through shadowy days yet to come. Reflection. Months had passed since the verdict, yet the echoes of that fateful day lingered in the air like a potent residue, a mix of grief, relief, and the quiet ache of loss that had nestled into the community's heart. Detective Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of the park where Lisa Matthews had last been seen, inhaling the crisp air tinged with the scent of pine and damp earth. The leaves, now stripped bare by winter's touch, resembled memories beautiful yet fragile, embodying the impermanence of life. She often visited this serene place for quiet reflection, haunted yet hopeful, gathering strength from the blooms that would soon arise in the coming season. As she watched families stroll by, laughter dancing in the chilled air, she couldn't help but marvel at the dichotomy of existence. How life could be so full of promise one moment and shadowed by tragedy the next.